What an amazing intro. Hello,
Yeah.
everyone. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Navigating CF and Self-Advocacy in Communities of Color. My name is Ashley Locke, and I will be your moderator for today's panel. Before I introduce our speakers, I want to review a few housekeeping items. This session is being recorded and will be available after the event on the CF Foundation YouTube channel. You will be notified by email when session recordings are available. We will be taking audience questions during this session. We encourage you to submit your questions at any time into the chat box. We will do our best to answer as many questions as possible. And before we begin, I want to remind everyone of our event conduct guidelines. Please be considerate, open-minded, and respectful. Honestly, just don't be a jerk. We ask that you do not use malicious or offensive speech and do not ask or give medical advice. If you feel the event conduct guidelines were violated, please contact a CF Foundation staff member in the help desk. We also have counselors on call today, so if at any point you feel overwhelmed by the conversation, you can visit the help desk to request to connect with a counselor. Now, let's get started, and I'm going to turn it over to Stephanie to introduce herself.
Thank you, Ashley. Hey, y'all. I'm Stephanie. I live in San Antonio, Texas. Thank you guys for asking me to be a part of this session. I feel super honored. I'm going to be 41 in just a few weeks. I was diagnosed with cystic fibrosis at 6 months old, and much like a lot of other people, the story of my diagnosis could be its own story, mostly because my mom is from Mexico, and so they did not believe that I could have CF since she was from Mexico. So I'd like to talk about, sorry, I just had a brain. Anyway, I'm a mother and a wife of 20 years, and I'm very grateful to discuss how I advocate for myself. Hopefully hearing what has worked for me and what has not worked for me will help you to better understand how to be a self-advocate. Whether it's in a hospital setting, the clinic, at the workplace, or at home, or even in discussions like this, I try to be a good listener so that I can advocate and understand others as well. That has helped me be a better self-advocate, is being a good listener. As things change and as I get older, so do my efforts to advocate for what is most important in my life. And right now, what is most important in my life is time. Learning to value myself, my health, and my time, like I said, is the foundation of my advocacy. Also, in being a better self-advocate, I always try to make efforts to meet the needs of others around me, in my community, and others, whether by supporting research studies related to Hispanic people with CF-related diabetes, volunteering at the local Lone Star chapter, or serving the city of San Antonio, a densely Hispanic populated community, or just my local healthcare system to be better at serving those with CF. I'm honored to have this opportunity to share with you all, and like we've talked about in some of the pre-meetings, I'm eager to hear what the other panelists have to say as well. Devanshi, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, thank you, Stephanie. Hello, everyone. My name is Devanshi, and I'm very excited to be here. I'm an international student from India, and I study biology at University of California, San Diego. Although I had symptoms almost throughout my life, I wasn't diagnosed with cystic fibrosis until I came to the US in 2021. I was 19 at that time. I currently take Kalydeco or ivacaftor, other name, and it has been working pretty well for me. I also have a diagnosis of eosinophilic asthma with bronchiectasis. I started running and hiking regularly. I got more into it just last year, and that has been a life changer. It has improved my lung function a lot, and it has helped expel mucus a lot easier. CF being a rare disease, my self-advocacy mainly involves explaining what the disease means, how it affects my daily life, and how it limits my engagement in certain activities. I will talk more about it later, but for now, I will let Ashley introduce herself.
Hello, everyone, and as I mentioned before, my name is Ashley Locke. I am 32 years old, living near Detroit, Michigan. I was diagnosed with cystic fibrosis at the age of 2, and getting that diagnosis was not an easy one. The only other person in my family that we had known of or had even heard of CF was my cousin that is on the Black side of my family. It was believed that CF was so incredibly rare in non-white CFers that they nearly imprisoned my uncle and his wife, believing that they had been abusing or neglecting their child that kept coming into the ER severely malnourished. I was lucky that my grandmother stepped up for the both of us, which led to a successful CF diagnosis and the rest of our lives. I was in and out of hospitals the majority of my childhood. I switched to homeschooling in the second grade due to getting sick constantly in school. By college, I started classes at the community college and kept up with that for as long as I could. I had to advocate for myself a lot during these times, learning my limits, and even at one point needing to stand up against a dean. By the time I was 24, my health began to take a drastic turn, and in 2018, I had my first lung collapse at 25 years old. The following months became a fight for survival as I was barely in the beginning stages of even considering transplant. Within the span of 5 months, I went through over 10 procedures that required anesthesia. The number of procedures that didn't require medication ramped up into the 100s. I had 2 more lung collapses, an experimental surgery only performed once before, and a successful double lung transplant in 2019. I've been managing a new side of CF since then and have since acquired diabetes and gastroparesis. Advocating for yourself through these obstacles, especially as a child or young adult, can be incredibly tricky and delicate procedure. Speaking up for yourselves at times of uncertainty can feel scary. In fact, one of the first times I can remember advocating for myself was a very young age. I was getting a blood draw and noticed the phlebotomist got out a standard gauge needle. I'm notorious for having very small rolling veins that are very hard to get. And I said, oh no, wait, I have small veins. I need a butterfly needle. And she was not only impressed that I knew what a butterfly needle was, but she immediately agreed and changed her prep. I'm thrilled to be here to talk to you alongside Stephanie and Devanshi about more ways you can advocate for yourself, either in small or large ways. Stephanie, let me ask you, how do you communicate with your care team?
Well, communicating with my CF care team evolves with age, as well as the CF care team itself evolves when new people come in or new members of the team. The adult clinic I'm a part of now is fairly new. It's only been accredited for about 8 years, I think. Most recently, there have been some tenuous conversations as I try to express my needs or demands for better care. But I would like to start by saying that with my care team, compliance is key. Even as I say that word, I struggle, but it is true. The more compliant I am, it definitely changes the response I get from my care providers. I make great effort to ensure that I understand what my needs are and ask for help appropriately. One example of this is in my early care at the university health system that I'm a part of. I was allowed to come in for treatment with my portacath already accessed, which nobody had a problem with, but the policy changed, and as it usually does, nobody asked my opinion about changing this policy in the hospital, which, happens all the time. Excuse me. But when they updated their policy, it kind of became a battle. I understand that I cannot change hospital policy, and they put these policies in to protect themselves. So I had to adjust and understand that I could no longer come in with my port accessed and that I needed to let the hospital do it. So although it was something that I was used to, I needed to understand that advocating for this was not going to be possible in this hospital setting because it is their policy. Another example would be during some heavy conversations related to transplant. I was very firm in my decision not to have a transplant and made sure that the conversation around that decision was grounded in making sure that my team, supported my decision. I tried to start these type of conversations with words like, let me share how I'm feeling about this, and it's not okay to give me an answer right now. Or can we talk more about this at my next appointment? or even more importantly, if I'm in a rush and I know I'm going to have a long clinic day, I try to communicate that before the clinic gets started so that they can be aware that I have needs outside of the clinic as well. So just being a good communicator in the CF clinic, I think or in any clinic setting is really important. I wanted to hear more, Devanshi, about your experience as being diagnosed at 19 and what that was like as far as communicating with your family and friends and stuff like that.
Yeah, thank you, Stephanie. So sharing my CF diagnosis with my family was confusing, since no one in our family tree had CF. And the common misconception that CF is rare in Asians, specifically Indians in my case, only added to that uncertainty. However, my CF team in San Diego here at UCSD was incredibly patient, and they answered all my questions and even spoke with my dad over a video call to address his concerns. Explaining CF to my friends was also a challenge. Like, even in America, CF is considered rare and not widely understood. Not many people know about it. So my friends, they Googled cystic fibrosis, but I had to clarify that it affects each patient differently and that not everything they read applied to me, even with my family. Like, I advised them not to go on Google because not everything would apply to me. What helped me communicate my needs was the awareness and acceptance that I am alone in a foreign country and must build my own support system. As a very social person and in college, I also live on campus. So I'm surrounded by friends almost every day, teaching them to maintain their distance when they're sick, even with a common cold, or being patient if I take multiple breaks while I'm, taking long walks with them or hiking with them or doing certain activities. I have to take a lot of breaks. So I have to just teaching them how to be patient and, um, just be considerate. That became essential for me as someone living with CF. Ashley, I'm curious, have you ever faced bias or discrimination in a medical setting?
Yes, I have, Devanshi. Though I consider myself to be a white passing mixed person, I do encounter bias in other ways, especially in the medical setting. It's no secret that I have quite a few tattoos and piercings, especially at my face. And often I have multicolored hair. It's kind of natural at the moment, which is a little bit more rare. But I do understand that sometimes my appearance doesn't always attract the best attention. I can recall several times in my life and medical life where I felt I wasn't being heard, being taken serious, or even at times was considered a degenerate that was making up their symptoms. I remember one time in particular, a couple of months after being diagnosed with diabetes, my blood sugar dropped real low while I was out with a friend at a show that I was really excited about. I wasn't sure what was happening, so I went to the local hospital there in Detroit. I was left in a room for over 12 hours without anyone checking on me while my sugar was still very low. They wouldn't allow anything in my room. I was transferred to the end of a dimly lit wing with two orderlies standing outside my door to guard me. I then had a nurse come in and attempt to give me a medication I had never heard of. I started to ask her questions as someone that's very attentive to my medical schedules and routines. She grew angry with me and she gave me a runaround and never really told me what the medication was, which rippled into other nurses outside my door beginning to act more rude towards me. I began to realize I wasn't taken seriously and I was potentially in danger. I had to request meetings with multiple hospital staff, including the head of the ER department, for an exit interview. They tried convincing me to stay, telling me that I needed to, telling me, X, Y, Z, that I needed these medications that I had never heard of. I continued being adamant despite everyone telling me to stay. I ended up transferring to my usual hospital and was taken care of without incident. As someone that's dealt with cystic fibrosis for several decades, I had become somewhat more comfortable in speaking up in uncomfortable situations. And that reminds me, Devanshi, what advice would you give someone that's newly diagnosed with CF about self-advocacy?
Thank you, Ashley. Something that I would tell someone who's newly diagnosed with CF would be prioritize your health. Your health should always be your top priority. No matter how close you are to someone, never hesitate to ask them to keep their distance if they're sick. It's not disrespectful, it's setting boundaries. Sometimes this could mean like canceling important plans or missing out on something you were deeply excited about. But no event is worth risking your health or ending up in the hospital. You may face backlash or accusations of being too sensitive, overreacting, being dramatic, or playing the victim when you're setting boundaries with people. Unfortunately, it's because self advocacy is often misunderstood. But the right people, the ones who truly care about you, will respect your boundaries. That said, it's also up to you to communicate and educate those around you about cystic fibrosis. Don't, as I mentioned before, don't just let them Google it. Help them understand how CF specifically affects you, because every CF patient's experience and condition is different. Some CFers can run marathons while others struggle to walk even a mile or a block. Clear communication is key to getting the right support. Lastly, I am aware that a lot of people prefer to keep their health problems private and not even tell their partners or friends about it until way later. It's okay, but I'd say tell them, tell anyone, build a support system. Definitely. There's no great harm in letting people know you have a chronic illness and you are not as healthy or fit as other people. I grew up hiding my health symptoms from people. I was told not to tell anyone that you're sick or, you have a chronic illness. And although I didn't know it was genetic and it was CF and it wasn't my, daily habits making me sick, I was misunderstood and made fun of and constantly judged. When your friends or people around you know what to deal with on a daily basis, it is so much easier to just be, not having to explain or look like a buzzkill for canceling plans or weak for being tired on walking with your friends or hiking and so many more things. People are more considerate and understanding and also more patient with you because they know. It doesn't make you weak, a burden, or different in a negative way. Yes, of course, CF is a big, scary, complicated disease, but going through CF with support is far better than facing it alone. Trust me on this. Just try it. Just tell your people. Plus, if people know about your condition and how to handle emergencies, they could potentially even save your life because you took the time to educate them about your specific case. Also, if one barrier could be, you're hesitant to tell people is that they don't understand or are dismissive, then hate to break it to you, they're just not worth hanging out with. I learned it the hard way. Sometimes you just have to let go of people. So to sum up, if you have CF, build a support system. You can do it alone. You can, of course, but you don't need to. You don't need to do it alone. Yeah, anyway, moving on. I have a question for Stephanie. Stephanie, you mentioned living in a largely Hispanic community. What kind of impact does that have in the care you receive?
Sorry, I was just clearing my throat. Yes.
No worries.
The healthcare system I'm a part of here in San Antonio, Texas, serves a lot of South Texas, and the clinic here in San Antonio even has patients that live in Mexico but come to Texas for treatment. I think the clinic here in San Antonio may be on the short list of clinics with a patient population that is mostly non-white. So since we are a majority, the clinic setting vibe is always pretty supportive and collaborative. But unfortunately, some of my experiences outside the clinic has not been the same as has not been the same. And as a child, I became very aware that the attitude and responses towards my mom, who is Mexican, versus my dad, who is white, is extreme. A crazy fact about me, my mom was born in Mexico and came to the States illegally in the 60s. And my dad was born in an orphanage in Ireland and came to the States in the 50s. I've also seen this play out, though, with my husband, who is Hispanic. And so that vibe really shifts when I'm by myself versus when I'm with my husband. Mostly they're just surprised that he is my husband. I don't know if that's necessarily because he's Hispanic or because he's really, really big. He's like 6 foot and 250 pounds. So maybe they're just surprised by that. But definitely the impact for the community as a whole is the responses and the attitude and how they treat people versus based on how they look. More now than ever, advocating for myself isn't just for me, but it's also ensuring that the people in my family feel safe and supported. So that means being sure that they're always able to visit me and that they feel safe and protected in a hospital or healthcare setting without fear from any government institutions. So although my clinic itself is very good at supporting the Hispanic community, the healthcare system as a whole has a lot of room to grow in that area. So we're learning, and obviously the current situation is much different than it was when the clinic first started. So it's evolving, and hopefully things will just get better. Ashley, I wanted to ask you if you have any advice for people who feel unheard or dismissed in the healthcare spaces based on their race.
Honestly, I think the best piece of advice I could give anyone as far as medical goes is arming yourself with knowledge and, as Devanshi mentioned, community. Be vocal, talk about the issues you've been experiencing, tell your friends, tell your family, let them ask questions, let them be curious, read your charts, know what your doctors are saying about your health, read your notes, understand where your care team might be coming from or what they may be seeing from their perspective. Taking your labs or your test results into account can be huge on knowing where to improve some areas or where to speak up. Knowing about your personal CF, because also as Devanshi mentioned, everyone can Google CF and, it's got basic information which can be helpful, but everyone's CF, as we've gotten older, we've noticed, all of us have a different type of CF and it can affect a lot of us in very drastically different ways. So knowing your own personal brand of CF and how it affects your body, your mental health, things like that can be very big on, understanding your own health and understanding how to speak up to others about it. You might not relate to everything you read, so always be curious. Always be adamant if you feel unheard. Reach out to different doctors in your network. Get second opinions if you have to. It can be a lot of work advocating for yourself, and that's why friends and family can be a huge help in getting your point across. Don't give up on yourself just because you may feel you're losing a battle. Keep getting up, keep talking about it, and keep learning. Well, before we answer some questions from the audience, Devanshi and Stephanie, I'd love to hear from the both of you. How did you gain the knowledge and self-confidence to advocate for yourself?
Yeah, thank you, Ashley. I mainly gained the knowledge and confidence to advocate for myself through a mix of lived experience, education, and resilience. Navigating the healthcare system, explaining CF to others, and handling challenges taught me what works best for me. Being alone in a foreign country pushed me to be more independent and communicate my needs clearly. And along the lines of what I also mentioned before, I was very misunderstood and judged due to my health issues, and I just didn't like it. It wasn't working out for me. I wasn't able to get the right help when I needed it, and I often spent my hospital visits alone, which is pretty depressing. And I struggled with a lot of things, and it just didn't make sense. I didn't want to spend my days or live my life struggling when there could be a possible solution. So I thought what I could do to change it. And that was just to educate my friends and people around me on what I deal with regularly, make them understand the intensity of it and the frequency of it, like, regular hospital visits and how it affects my daily life. It's not just like a once in a year thing. It's something you deal with on a daily basis most of the time. And as I saw all that working and helping me, I got more vocal about it and expressing my needs and boundaries. And that has been a life changer. And over time, facing judgments or misconceptions only strengthened my ability to stand my ground. And yeah, so most of it through trial and error, I've learned that self-advocacy isn't just about speaking up. It's about making sure I get the care, respect, and support I need. Stephanie, would you like to answer that question as well?
Yeah, sure. I like what you said, Devanshi, though, about trial and error. Some of it is just practicing. Practice how to advocate for yourself, and then you get better at it as you go in little ways, right? So you can start by practicing. One of the things I really, really like is like when I'm in the hospital, like from, being admitted, it's important to me that I know the person who's treating me. So I'll ask them, like, what's your name? Or introduce yourself. I'll introduce myself. That's like a super minor thing, but that's a good way to start practicing how to speak up and to make a connection so that you feel comfortable asking for anything in particular. But I also wanted to share that in advocacy, for me, my goal is not to be understood, but to be heard. Recently, during a hospital stay, there was an emergency in my husband's family, so I needed to be home so that my husband could travel to take care of his parents. So it was a very stressful time, and one of the ways I was able to communicate what our family needed at that time was just to ask, how can I get home sooner so that I can meet this need of my family? And even though they didn't understand, they definitely heard me. And so we made a plan so that I could go home a little bit earlier. Most people outside of this awesome community of CFers don't and can't understand what it is to struggle with CF on a daily basis. But I don't expect anyone to understand what it is living with CF, but I do appreciate being heard. Right now, my number one caregiver is myself. I want to be well enough to help raise my daughter, love my husband, be a good daughter, be a good sister, be a good friend. And I have to say that along those lines, my husband, my daughter, and my siblings, along with my parents, are very supportive. And so that helps me feel very confident in advocating for myself. They also value me and the time that I spend with them. And so they also help my medical teams value me and my time and our time as a family. How do I do that while understanding my needs is to work on communicating those needs and want by hearing the needs of others around me as well. Being a good listener also helps me be understood. I have gained confidence to advocate for myself by learning what I need to say or what I need to stay well, and then also understanding how to ask for help. So those are some ways that I've learned, or I guess become more confident, is to make sure that I understand what I'm asking for is valid, and then kind of curving what I'm asking for to the audience I'm asking it of. So I wouldn't necessarily ask my parents opinions on medications that they aren't familiar with, or I wouldn't ask my clinic opinions on my parents if they're not familiar with it. So I tried to make sure that I'm putting things in the right places so that I can get the help that I need when I need it.
That's a really great point, Stephanie and Devanshi. That reminds me of there's been a few times during hospital stays, and as you mentioned, trying to at least, get to know the people that are caring for you, or, build a rapport with them. One thing that I enjoy doing is playing a really weird game of Would You Rather. When people come into my room, I'll give them two crazy options, and some of them will will play along, some of them won't, but my favorite ones, they really got into it and they were like, okay, what are my resources? Can I do this and this and this? And it ended up being a really fun experience, and that's something that I do anytime that I'm in a hospital setting. Well, we are now going to answer some questions from the audience. If you have any questions, go ahead and put them in the chat. If you have a question that you would like to address to a particular panelist, please add their name to the question. And it looks like we actually have a couple of questions here. So I'll start with the first one that we had. We have a comment saying that I've never met another person of Indian descent with CF. When I was diagnosed as a baby, no one in my family had ever heard of it. And to this day, much of my family don't really know anything other than that I'm sick. How do you all approach talking to a family or community that doesn't think CF happens to them?
Yeah, I could answer that. So what mainly helped me was that so what actually happened was that my dad, when I had my doctor in India, because I came to US only in 2021. So before that, I had a doctor in India who just diagnosed me with asthma and ABPA, which is allergic aspergillosis. And my dad once asked, like, could this be a case of cystic fibrosis? Because my dad often goes on Google to just like look up my symptoms, like he's a little bit of web doc. So he asked, and then my doctor dismissed it by saying, no, she doesn't have pancreatic symptoms because I mostly have respiratory, like my lungs. So, and the doctor also said that it is very uncommon in Asians and Indians, especially. So, but when I was diagnosed here in the US, what really helped tell and explain it to my parents and my family members was I just handed the phone to the doctor and was like, could you please explain it to them? And he explained it really well. He went into the biology of it. So I think something that really helps is when you just say, oh, science says this, and this is how it happens. Yeah, nobody. So how I phrased it was that nobody in my family has it. So I was like, you don't have to have it. You could just be a carrier, like, just explaining the biology, like one gene comes from mom, one gene comes from dad, and mutations and all that stuff. And if they have trouble understanding the scientific terms that you're using, like mutations and genes, then you could use Google for definitions and stuff. It makes it a lot easier. But I think what helped me and make them understand what exactly CF is and how it could happen, even in non-European, non-white, Caucasian ethnicities, is by just telling them the science side of it. And even that doesn't help, just show them the research papers and the proof and be like, hey, recently it's becoming more well known that it could happen in this. So I think what I used is because I'm also a biology student, so I very much use science for my explanations. So that's what helped me.
And I also want to make a comment of I was part of BreatheCon and Next Breath last year, and we actually had a CFer that was very very active in the CF community for several decades, and they made a comment during the session that up until the last couple of years, even someone that has studied CF, even thought that it was extremely uncommon for Asians or non-white and stuff like that to have CF. So it's always very eye-opening to be able to have such a diverse panel like this, because as someone mentioned, they've never met anyone else of Indian descent or anything like that, and there are some of us out there. It's just all getting our voices out and being heard.
Yeah, I'd just like to add one thing. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, go ahead. That's okay. Go ahead.
Oh, yeah. I was just gonna say I just remember one thing that after I got diagnosed with CF, I tried to contact more people with CF, and I learned that Actually, there are a lot of people in India that have CF. I joined a WhatsApp group which had over 200 people in it, most of them with CF or kids with CF. And what happens in India is tuberculosis is pretty common, I've heard, according to my knowledge. And I was myself misdiagnosed with tuberculosis when I was 10. I didn't have it, nothing, but I just got misdiagnosed because the symptoms are very similar, like coughing up blood and coughing extensively for long periods of time. So I think a lot of people where CF is considered rare, they just get misdiagnosed or just, diagnosed with something else and not CF. And also India and certain countries lack genetic testing or like newborn screening. So that just adds up to the case.
I wanted to just say really quickly, I think it's really challenging when there's like labels put on things. So like people being sick or healthy or not healthy or whatever. I know my mom's side of the family used to call me La Malita, which is like the sick one. That was like my nickname for the longest time. Malita just means like sick or bad or weak. It's like it's kind of derogatory now that I think about it, but it was meant lovingly, not disrespectful. But I think trying to have those conversations that this isn't a, like you were kind of talking about earlier, Devanshi, like today I'm doing well and tomorrow I may not be. It's kind of educating them enough to understand that this is a genetic issue. It isn't something that can be treated without treating the genetic foundation of the problem. So I think education is probably the most important part as far as helping to communicate with your family, about what your disease is.
I agree. And those are some wonderful points from both of you. It looks like our next question is for Stephanie. How do you handle moments when you feel unheard or dismissed?
Well, that's a good question. I think if we're talking about in the medical field or like in the healthcare context, I have no problems asking for a different nurse or asking for a different opinion. The hospital setting or the clinic setting that I'm in is a university setting. So it's what most people would consider like a teaching or a learning hospital. So there's always varying opinions on a lot of different things. And I now have a really good relationship with my specific university. 5 ACU is the floor that all the CFers go to. So it's like our own little community there as far as the nursing and stuff like that goes. So I don't know if I would necessarily say that in that unit that I've been unheard or dismissed recently, but that's taken time. It's okay to ask for a different nurse. It's okay to ask for a different respiratory therapist. It's okay to ask for a second opinion if you have other people putting input into your care. So that's kind of how I feel like I deal with that in the medical setting. Outside of that, with my family or supportive members of the community or what have you, I think I try not to let it bother me emotionally. I try to present facts. I try to be a little less emotional when I'm discussing things that I feel like I'm not being heard in or I feel like people are being dismissive of. I try to give an answer to their question, or I try to respond with not just feelings, but facts, and hope that kind of helps to be heard a little bit better. I don't know if that really answers the question, but it is very unfortunate that a lot of people go through trying to explain their disease or trying to battle their disease and have other members of their family or the healthcare system not be supportive or not hear them. So presenting facts is always a way that has helped me.
I agree. Looks like
understanding yourself. Sorry. Understanding yourself also.
Exactly. And that brings it back to a point that I made earlier, is understanding your own brand of cystic fibrosis. Because as we all mentioned, you can Google and it'll tell you some things that are accurate, but everyone kind of has their own brand of CF that, we've got different ailments that are similar and different, and it varies so much from case to case.
Can I share a story about being dismissed, if that's okay?
What was that?
Can I share a story about being dismissed, if that's okay with you?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so as most CFers have to, get to a point where they decide if they want to have a family or not. I did fertility care to have my daughter, and the first fertility care specialist that we saw said that he wanted to test my husband for any genetic markers, and that if my husband was positive for any genetic markers, he would not help us have a baby because he didn't feel like that was a good move for us, I guess. I'm not really sure. And I felt extremely dismissed. Like what I wanted didn't matter because he had his opinion. So that was kind of an example of having those feelings. And then I went on and found another one who was very happy to help us get pregnant. So sometimes it's just about understanding your options.
I agree. It looks like our next question will be for Devanshi. If you are comfortable, would you be able to share more about your diagnosis story?
Yeah, definitely. Thank you, Ashley. So as I mentioned, I grew up in India, and I had symptoms almost throughout my life. And initially, I was diagnosed with just asthma, and then I was misdiagnosed with tuberculosis at the age of 10, and I was even started on the medications. And then when the symptoms were not improving and I caught pneumonia and all that stuff, we consulted another doctor, and they were like, no, tuberculosis doesn't seem to be the case here. And why are you on medications? And so that doctor, he was a pediatrician, and he referred me to a pulmonologist, like a specialist, in another city, which was about 250 kilometers away from the city I lived in. So we went there, and a lot of tests, medical tests, CT scans, blood tests, and all sorts of tests. I don't even remember. I was too young. And I was finally diagnosed with ABPA, which is allergic bronchopulmonary aspergillosis. It's like an allergy to a specific fungus called Aspergillus fumigatus, which is probably all around us in the soil and air, the dust particles you see in the sun rays everywhere. Um, and then I was also diagnosed with eosinophilic asthma. My eosinophil count, or the IgE, both of them were like super high, the white blood cells. So I was diagnosed, and also CT scan, it helped. So I started going every 15 to 30 days for checkup visits to another city. And that I did for years until I came to the US. And also, yeah, when I was in India, I was coughing up blood, and I used to be started on antifungals. And I didn't used to go to hospital in India. I used to think I just convinced, and I just thought that coughing up blood was normal with asthma and ABPA that I had. So antifungals, cool, helped few days, few weeks, and I was fine. And then next month, or a few months later, a few weeks later, comes again, and I was like, okay, this is my life, it's normal. And then I came to the US for college, so I had to set up my own like whole medical system here, because like medical care here, because now I have to live here. So I just went to doctor to like set up my initial visit, and just like, get medications for asthma. And they were like, this seems sus. And, they studied my case and everything. And the pulmonologist could just say that, this seems the case for CF. We're going to test you. And they did some tests and stuff, and I was diagnosed with CF. My CF is not super severe. It's mild to moderate. My asthma and my ABP is more of the severe case. Um, but CF has affected me. And as I grow, like as I progress, like my age, I'm starting to experience new symptoms like joint pains and some stomach issues, and which are not that severe again. But yeah, so that's my diagnosis journey. I was just diagnosed after coming to the States randomly with no idea of what even CF was. Yeah, my dad asked the doctor when I was a kid once, but I never looked it up. And then I came here, and oh, cystic fibrosis. I went on Google. I got freaked out. I was like, shit, am I gonna die? But Yeah, my CF care team was pretty patient and they answered all the numerous questions I had. My CF visits used to go 3 hours long because I had so many questions. Like initially, I used to just sit with the doctor for like 20 minutes straight, or 30 minutes even, just asking all the questions I had in my mind. And super patient, super considerate they were. And yeah, it was pretty nice. So I had a hard time being consistent with all the treatments that were given to me, the nebulizers and stuff, because I didn't do them my whole life, my teenage life and everything. I was 19, and to pick those habits up as an adult or like as, a grown-up person, it was very, very hard. I was not at all consistent, even with, so I'm on ivacaftor right now. I don't take Trikafta or anything, but ivacaftor has worked amazing for me. Even with that, I had a hard time staying consistent, but now I'm pretty good. But yeah, that was my diagnosis journey. Thank you for the question.
What an amazing story. It's so interesting. Again, just seeing, everyone's different experience with CF and just how, what an incredible experience for you to be here on your own and having to navigate that. Like, you are just a rock star. Let's see, there's a question for me or anyone else. Has there been a positive experience in a medical setting that helped you rebuild your trust? For me personally, I have always been, since I was pretty young, I've tried to be pretty vocal with my care teams and all of that. I do know, however, and as Devanshi mentioned, being, a 19, 20, 21-year-old with CF, it's not the most fun. And I'm sure a lot of us can relate, especially during that age bracket. I personally was not very compliant. I did most of my medications to the best of my ability, but being, a young person trying to do things with your life and experience new things and get out there, it can be such something that just gets pushed into the background. And unfortunately for me, I feel a lot of my experience growing up was kind of a give and take. I was taken seriously for the most part, but I was also pretty rebellious. So it was partially my fault that I wasn't being taken serious. And so once my health actually began to get a lot worse, and I realized, like, oh, I really do have to keep up with these medications. And the fact that I felt better at this time just meant that my medications are working. Once I actually buckled down and, started like understanding a bit more about my own CF, keeping up with my medications, getting my lab work and, things like that, maybe a little bit better to the best of my ability, that definitely has helped create an amazing bond with my care team. I feel my care team at this point is 100% a second family for me. I trust my care team very much because, especially during my biggest health scares, I became a lot more vocal and they became a lot more attentive, knowing that I was putting an effort into trying to understand my care and make it a little bit better. That gives them some hope for you as well to maybe put a little fire under you to continue with what you're supposed to do. And because of that, because of talking with my care team and analyzing, my personal brand of CF and kind of being able to work on my, test results and things like that and improve in some areas, it has definitely helped rebuild my trust with my care team. My care team trusts me. We both know that I'm someone that will speak up if I'm not feeling well, if something's not, going right. And so I definitely think that becoming a lot more aware, a lot more knowledgeable, and a lot more attentive to my own care is really what helped rebuild trust as a whole in the medical system. At the end of the day, I kind of realized, a lot of these doctors and nurses and specialists we're all people going to work, and we're going to do our best and with the knowledge that we have. But some of us, we don't know everything, and it's up to us to really collaborate and, speak and make that an experience that you can walk away from feeling empowered. Did either of you want to add on to that?
Yeah, I'd like to add to that, if that's okay with you all.
Absolutely.
Thank you. For me, rebuilding trust or having trust in, the medical professionals that have input in our lives. I do have like a really positive experience that's really surrounded by one individual pulmonologist. She actually was a part of the pediatric CF care clinic back when we were still with PEDs before the adult clinic opened, and she became the director of the adult clinic. And the way she cared for me, the way she responded to me, the way she went out on a limb for me against the university at times, like even her employer, to stand up for me, really helped me build a lot of trust in her and the program that she was building, even to the point where, she's kind of stayed in the background because she's now the director of like the whole pulmonary department, not just the CF department. So she kind of oversees the CF department in the background. And just having that established relationship with her has really helped me build a lot of trust in the system that she's a part of. So having her kind of build that trust for me and them has been crucial. Another one was the same physician, but I'd been diagnosed with a bacteria called Mycobacterium avium complex, and the treatment for that was not something the university that I was seeing here in San Antonio could support. So she recommended that I visit the National Jewish Health CF Care Center in Colorado. And so she was able to make that connection for me, and I was able to start on some medication that was not approved for people with CF. So it was considered like a drug study. And because of that connection, I've been able to stay on that medication at my university and no longer have to go back to Colorado. So it's also seeing that she was able to get help from others on how to best take care of me that really helped to establish that trust, that she wasn't afraid to ask others for help that might have more experience than her, which I think is, it's just an example of how she was willing to kind of go the extra mile to take care of me. So that was really crucial for our relationship and as far as treating my care or treating my CF.
Yeah, I would like to add on it if that's okay.
Absolutely.
Yeah, please.
Yeah, I've mostly had like positive experiences and because luckily I compare it to back in India and where I had limited healthcare access because nobody knew what CF was, so I didn't have CF specific care there. Even though my doctor in India was super nice, but here the CF team, I often thought that I compared myself with other patients with CF because I was told that my CF is pretty mild to moderate. It's not super severe. I might never need a lung transplant. So I compared my case with other people with CF and I invalidated my own symptoms. And I used to be like, oh, it's just a cold. It's not that bad. I don't need to go to the hospital. And, something like that. It's just a lung infection. I'll deal with it. And then it got super bad. And then I had to go to the ER. And the positive experience was that my CF team, they have always been they have always taken me so seriously that has just made me feel so comfortable because I always was hesitant to reach out because I was like, even though I know it's their job to take care of me, but my, thought process was that, oh, they might, I'm wasting their time because they might as well take care of other patients who have it more, who have it worse than me. But they have always taken me so seriously, made me so comfortable, feel so comfortable. And when I was in the ER at times, they called me, the nurse and the CF care team and social work, and they're like, did they give you the room in the ER instead of putting you in the hallway? And are you getting everything you need? And, what do we what can we do for you and all that stuff. And I'm like, that's so sweet. And it's so nice. So they've always made me feel positive and comfortable, and always been taken seriously. So I got lucky in that. So yeah, that's just wanted to share that.
I'm so glad that we've all had experiences that really keep us, feeling kind of comfortable and confident despite all of the challenges that we have to face with these teams. It looks like we have time for just one more question. Let me see here. How can allies help amplify the voices and experiences of people of color living with CF?
I think go ahead.
Sorry, go on. You go first.
No. Oh, well, I was just going to say, I think that's important for people in general, not just people with CF, is to have allies who are willing to support you and help carry your voice or your message wherever you're going. In particular with CF, I think we talk about having a good support system. And for a lot of us, we are the only person in our family with CF. I was until about 12 years ago. My cousin had a son with CF. And so it's not so much just about being an ally in the moment. It's about what that means for the future too. So, for me, having now a cousin with a son with CF, he was an ally to me before he had his son. So just having that connection of that kind of generational support is really important. And so to have family work as an ally, and obviously not with the hopes that they're affected in any way negatively, but I think that's a way that allies can help us, is that they can be supportive to us. And as far as within communities of color, since we're all family, usually we tend to be around the same ethnicity. So having that family support is one way that allies can be in our lives, is keeping them familially connected.
Yeah, I definitely agree with Stephanie. And one way I feel that they could help amplify the voices and experiences of people like us is by just being there for us. It's just that simple, and just like if they see somebody around us judging us, or coming at us for example, especially after COVID, when you cough around people, it's kind of, you get judged and people get scared, which is pretty valid. It's fine. But, just our allies or friends and family just standing up for us, that means a lot, because I know I've experienced that, and it just made me feel so good. I remember one incident where I was outside, and I kind of was having trouble breathing where I couldn't even walk. It was more like an asthma attack, but it was also like I was also coughing up, and so it was. I often get confused if it's CF or asthma, but because similar symptoms, but it was lungs. And my friend, the firefighters or the paramedics, whatever they call it here, they came, and the first thing they asked was, "Oh, does she drink?" Because it was the area where it was like downtown area restaurant and stuff. So it's like, oh, is she drunk? Did she drink or something like that? Did she consume any alcohol? And I'm the kind of person, even after being 22, I've never even tasted alcohol. So it was just funny to me. But my friend was like, no, and she was able to explain the whole like CF situation. And, so her just knowing and being educated on what I had and what I deal with is really helpful. And her actually standing up for me, and not even just standing up, like it didn't need stand up because the paramedic question was pretty obvious and general, but just like willing to explain and step up was really, really helpful, and it really was very sweet.
I agree. Just honestly, like we've all been saying, is speaking up, allowing your friends and family to ask questions, being open and honest with them. One of my good friends was present for 2 out of 3 of my lung collapses. That poor girl, but she was an absolute rock star. Like, she kept it calm. She was able to communicate for me during a time that I literally could not breathe, and I can't thank her enough for that. It does look like we're just about out of time, so I would like to wrap up for us all. Thank you to our speakers for being vulnerable and sharing their knowledge and insights into self-advocacy as a person of color. Thank you to everyone for your participation and your great questions. Before you go, please fill out the satisfaction question under the poll tab on the right-hand side of your screen. We have some great sessions coming up next, including small group discussions for those who identify as Black or Hispanic to connect with and share your experiences. If this applies to you, we invite you to join and continue the conversation. Thank you again for attending, and we will see you at the next sessions.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.